Old School Treasure is easy to find at Paradise Drag Strip in Calhoun, Georgia, because the track itself is a piece of drag racing history. This place has been in operation since 1961. It's always been operated by the Timms family, and this event in particular is a memorial for Otto Timms, the guy who built this place and maintained it for many, many years. Now, Paradise Drag Strip has multiple events a year that include a swap meet, a car show, and fun runs on the 8th Mile Drag Strip. So this is the first one of the 2025 season. It's the Otto Timms Memorial event, and it was packed with good stuff. And the very first thing that got my attention in the swap meet was this rear engine dragster. Now this is a vintage rear engine dragster. This is not a modern chassis, but you can see the build quality on this thing is top notch. This was a pro-built car, and you can see that all of the hand lettering and airbrush work is still intact. You can see on the side here it says R. Higley's Little Blue Express. You can also see Big Al's Toy Boxes represented here and lots of other sponsor decals, and we see a class designation of SC for Super Comp. So this thing was an NHRA Super Comp dragster. We can see that it's raced in the 1990s. We've got some event decals here from Englishtown, Gainesville, and other tracks from 1993. So this thing was very active and racing at some pretty big points races. But you can see that they've added to the bodywork here. They've actually added a radiator, a side mount radiator, because these class cars, they would have to hot lap these things. So a radiator was kind of a must. Out back, it's got a complete Strange Engineering rear end. It's based off of a 9-inch Ford, but you can see it's got back braces. It's narrowed, obviously. It's got Strange Engineering axles. It's ready to go. And from what I've been able to gather, this car had a Mopar engine on it, which is definitely unusual. Most of the time you see a dragster, it's going to have a small block Chevy or a big block Chevy on it. Then it's got a set of centerline wheels on the back and some spindle mount centerline wheels on the front. Definitely an old school combination, something you'd likely see in the 80s or early 90s. And it's still up and rolling on that combo, so it's really cool that the paint survived and these wheels and tires survived. And the owner was asking $4,000 or best offer. This would be a great deal for somebody. It looks like it was recently NHRA certified, so I'm sure that this thing would pass tech at the local track and give you plenty of enjoyment for just a few $1,000s. Other cool stuff in the swap meet included this Crosley. Now, it looks like it's up and running and driving. The owner was asking $9,500 for it. It's got a narrowed rear end. It's got some ProStar wheels on it. It's a pretty cool setup. It'd definitely be a wild ride. It didn't matter if you had a crazy motor in there or not. This thing is super lightweight and probably a lot of fun to drive. I always like digging through the parts because you never know what you'll find. I really like this little scoop, and usually you see these and they're cast aluminum, but this one's actually fiberglass. All the studs were intact. That could be a good piece on an old gasser. I like the extra deep grooves on these small block Chevy valve covers. No breather holes. This is an old school setup. Now this booth had some pretty cool stuff. We've got a 2.4 intake for a small block Chevy, some FE Ford valve covers, and then this really cool intake manifold that's for a Buick nailhead with 3 deuces, an old Offenhauser piece. Tunnel rams are always eye candy at the swap meet, and this was a good one right here. This is an Edelbrock. We call these a bread box because of the square sides on it. These things are really cool looking, and they're definitely period correct on a 60s gasser. Now the Corvette guys are going to hate this. Fin aluminum valve covers with the breathers put right in the middle of the script. You gotta love hot rodders. Now this is the ultimate swap meet rig right here. This is a Ford Econoline van. It's got some torque thrust wheels on it, got some cool patina, and plenty of room to haul swap meet stuff. So this guy had some good old school treasure, including some fender well headers that'd be just right on an old gasser. Now this guy was parked in the swap meet, but I don't think it was for sale. This thing is so cool. It's a 57 Chevy Nomad, and you can see the paint on it's a little rough around the edges, but look under the hood. This is a supercharged LS9 out of a ZR1 Corvette, big time horsepower, and you can see this thing sits just right, black steel wheels, dog dish caps. This thing is pretty much perfect. Now, I've got a soft spot for 64 Chevelles, and I love this one. I saw it pulling in. It's got a plexiglass scoop on it, an old tack on the hood, and then the black steel wheels and dog dish caps. That just makes anything look mean. But I just love this car because it's a little bit rough, a little bit rowdy, just a cool combination. Now this thing looks like it came straight out of the woods. This is an old Ford Torino, and you can see the stripes are still intact. You can see it's still got its Magnum wheels on there. Still got a 351 under the hood. This thing is so cool. I'd love to see it just cleaned up, some fresh tires put on it. You know, just the normal treatment to get this thing back on the road. because it's such a cool piece, and it looks relatively solid considering it's sat outside for a long time. There's always a bunch of cool stuff to look at in the car show at these events because it's like you never see the same car twice. You can go year after year and see a whole different group of cars. And the thing that caught my attention right off the bat was this extremely cool Chevrolet cab over truck with a ramp bed, and most importantly, on that ramp bed is a Fiat altered. Now this Fiat has got some serious history. I don't know the history yet. That's something I want to track down. But this thing was supposedly based in the Atlanta area, so it probably ran at tracks like Yellow River. It may have even ran at Paradise back in the day. But this thing is so cool, and it's an extremely good survivor. You can see it's got magnesium spindle mount wheels on the front with the old tires. You can see the old paint, the lettering, it's all intact. Only a few updates have been made on this car. So when this car was brought out of long-term storage, a fresh small block was put together and they put a regular automatic transmission in it. But what's really cool is that they kept the clutch flight that was in this car. So you can see over here to the side, they've got the clutch flight on display, and that's just a piece of history in itself. So really neat combination here. This old car has got a lot of cool pieces on it. The upholstery on the inside, just every piece of it is cool. And then when you look underneath it, I mean, it's got some pretty good fabrication. It's got a chrome axle up front with a transverse leaf and lever action shocks. And then out back, it's got coil springs with these custom little pockets on a big old rear end. Just a neat combination. This thing was probably a wild ride back in the 60s. I'm sure it was sketchy with that suspension. I'm sure it was sketchy with whatever was powering this thing. It was probably too much to handle. But right now, it's just a really cool piece of history, and it's great to look at, especially on the back of that ramp truck. Now, here's a wild combination I saw on the car show. This is an El Camino. You can see it's flat black. It's kind of patched up here and there. It's got an LS motor under the hood, but look at that piping. That intake pipe goes to the back of the car, which back here in the bed, it's got a remote mounted turbocharger and air-to-air intercooler. I bet this thing is a lot of fun to drive. Here's another old school drag car. You can see the quarter panels have been cut out for those slicks. It's got some patch panels here and there. It's a little bit ratty, but look inside. You got the old school bracket racer fan. You got some gauges. Got a rowdy small block under the hood, which the hood has a teardrop scoop pop riveted on it, super trick wheels, big fat tires front and back, really cool combination. He was out there running it too. I absolutely love sleepers, and look at this Ford Fairmont 4-door. This thing is slick, and then right behind it is a killer G-body 4-door. This thing had serious horsepower. He was running way down in the 6s, and it looked like it was grandma's 4-door sedan. Now, if you like dirt track racing, this little Model A sedan had some definite dirt track influence. You can see it's got a wing up top, it's got a roll cage, some old school bucket seats, and some neat lettering that's just old enough to look like it came from back in the day. It's got some big old Firestone bi-sply tires on it, neat setup, and it had a pretty rowdy sounding small block Chevy in it as well. The little car next to it is a Model T sedan, and it's got an inline 6-cylinder, 292 cubic inch setup, stretched out in the front, chop top. Rear of the frame has been Z'd to get that ride height way down there. Now here's a really neat old drag car. This thing looks like it's fresh off the showroom floor. I think you could change the wheels out and take this to any car show out there. But check this out. This is an in-stock automatic stock eliminator car. So this thing is a 302 with a 2-barrel. Look under the hood right here. 2-barrel carburetor, bone stock 302 with just those stock eliminator tricks that they're allowed to do. And you could tell it had those super stock tricks underneath because this thing planted the tires, raised the front end up in the air, and just went down the track. Even though it didn't make a lot of horsepower, it's still pretty entertaining to watch. The Moody Blue 56 Chevy was a pretty cool one. It's got radius wheel wells, straight axle, tunnel ram and 2.4 sticking out, and is a stick shift. Here's another stick shift 56 Chevy, this time in super stock trim. This is a really neat piece here from Alabama. It made a few good passes down the track as well. Now this one didn't make any passes down the track. It was over in the car show area, but this is a 37 or 8 Chevrolet Pro Mod. Check out the engine combination here. Big blower and injector hat sticking up. Killer fiberglass body with exaggerated proportions. Huge wing on the back. Zoomy headers. This thing has it all. One of the coolest things about Paradise Drag Strip, and specifically these events where they have fun runs, is that they always play the national anthem, and they put some old cars out on the track and idle them down through there with the American flag waving. It's just kind of a surreal moment every time. I've been here for dozens of these, but every time it's just a special moment to see these old cars and that American flag waving. Another really cool thing they do is before the racing actually starts, they let people just drive down through the track. So that actually builds up a little bit of heat in the rubber, a little bit of heat in the track prep, and it's just cool. It allows everybody to get their engines warmed up, transmission, rear end oil, all that stuff. You'll have it ready to go, and it's always entertaining to see these old cars kind of do parade lap to get things warmed up.